Okay, so in this video we're gonna go over some of the functions that are described in chapter 15. Basically, we're gonna go over an example that explains how to use several different functions for numeric variables. These are the n, miss, max, largest, and mean functions. We're gonna be following program 15.2, which is on page 226, to illustrate the usage of these functions. So here's the program. Data set is called score. This is, it's included in the program. That's why we use the data lines statement as usual. The variables are an ID variable, which is this one. It's a character variable. And then we have the answers to questions 1 through 10, which are numbers. And supposedly, from what the book says, this is coming from a psychological study. This is the results of probably a questionnaire or something like that. Okay, so now as you can see, there's several missing values, and that is pretty common in real world data. You'll have a lot of missing values and you have to deal with them. Now so we want to compute something called score 1, which will be the average or the mean of the first 5 questions, but only if there are 3 or more non-missing values. Okay, so the n function gives you the number of non-missing values. So now we're doing this conditional statement. If the number of non-missing values between Q1 and Q3 is greater than 3, so we have no more than 3, no more than 2 missing values in this case, right? So the number of non-missing values is 3 or more, then we compute score 1, which is the mean of Q1 through Q5. So that's the syntax. Now, also we want to compute something called score 2, which is the average or the mean of questions 6 through 10. And we want to compute this if there are 2 or fewer missing values. 2 or fewer missing values. So we could have used the n function because that tells you, how many non-missing values you have. In that case, it will be, n of Q6 through Q10 will be greater than 3, greater than or equal to 3 in that case. But we were illustrating the usage of n miss, which tells you the number of missing values among these variables here. So if the number of missing values between Q6 and Q10 is less than 2, then score 2 will be the mean of Q6 through Q10. As you can see, for example, for the first observation, this is Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4, Q5, Q6. So we have 2 missing values. Now, if the number of missing values between 6 and 10 is less than 2, yes, then we will compute the mean of this. By the way, the mean function ignores missing values. Okay, so what it will do is that it will take just the average of these 3 numbers. Now, score 3 is the highest score between Q1 through Q10. So it's the max function what we use here. Maximum of Q1 through Q10. If you want the minimum value, well, then you use min. In this case, we wanted the maximum, the largest value. Now, score 4 is the sum of the 3 highest score of Q1 through Q10. So, is the sum, that's the sum function of what? Well, sum of the largest one of Q1 to Q10 that gives you the largest value among this. Now, largest, the second largest, and this is the third largest. Okay? You could have used max for this, but largest is, is a better function to use here, since we we'll want also the second largest and the third largest and so on. Okay, so this is the sum of the largest, the second largest, and the third largest values from Q1 through Q10. And then we have the data here. Let's run this and see what we get. Well, you see, for example, in the first observation, there's no missing observations among the first 5. So score 1 is, we get the computation for it. Then score 2 will be computed if the number of missing values is less than 2. So that means 1 missing value or no missing values. Now we had 2 missing values here among the 6 through 10. So it doesn't compute score 2. Okay. Score 3 is the largest of all of them. Score 4 is the sum of the 3 largest values, which in this case should be 8, 9, and 7. Okay. So yes, so that's how you do. Well, I mean, one of the examples that we could come up with, but this is, just an example that illustrates how to use some of these pretty useful functions. There's many more. We wouldn't have time. We could be here forever because there's so many SAS functions that you can use. But there's a pretty good sampling of them in chapter 15, which you should read very carefully.